All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. So, the writing was on the wall that there was a roster overhaul coming for the Miami Dolphins, and it got into full gear yesterday as the Dolphins released Pro Bowl wide receiver Tyreek Hill, Pro Bowl linebacker Bradley Chubb, offensive lineman James Daniels, and wide receiver Nick Westbrook Ikine. So these are all cap driven moves by the Dolphins. And honestly, I'm not surprised by any of it. I mean, the Dolphins have themselves a new general manager in John Eric Sullivan and a new head coach in Jeff Hafley. Both Hafley and Sullivan are not attached at the hip with any of the players on this roster. And of course, they are starting the process of reshaping this Dolphins organization within their respective images. So make no mistake about it, with the departure of Tyreek Hill, the speed era is officially over in Miami. And you think about what the Dolphins were the last 4 years. And of course, once they went out there and made the trade for Tyreek Hill and the expectations that came along with it, they got to the postseason in 2022 and, of course, 2023, but they were one and done each time. And Miami still has not won a playoff game since the 2000 NFL season. It's one of those where, I said that, this is part of it because I think there's more that's going to be coming. And I said this during the season once Tua was benched. I think the writing is on the wall that Tua has played his last game with the Miami Dolphins organization. I truly think that the Dolphins are starting over from scratch completely. It's one of those for me. If you're the Dolphins, and I know that they got there's going to be some dead cap money. I get it. But do you want to be a bad, inexpensive team or a bad, expensive team? And as the Dolphins are starting over, they're going to be a bad, inexpensive team. Like I said before, they've got some dead cap money that's going to be coming. Don't get me wrong, but nonetheless, they are starting fresh. You kind of knew that it was over for Tyreek Hill. Unfortunately, when he suffered that horrific leg injury this past season. Of course, in that Monday night game against the Jets, unfortunately, we saw Hill sustain not only a torn ACL, but also a dislocated kneecap. And of course, with his salary, number, the Dolphins were not going to go out there and pay him that money coming back from that injury. So it's one of those where, like I said, John Eric Sullivan, he went to Miami after being in the front office of the Green Bay Packers. And like I said, he is going to shape this roster for the Dolphins in his own image. They are hitting the reset button completely because let's face it, Miami was not going anywhere with this roster. You think about it, they've given Tua a lot of money, but even in Tua's best season, which was 2023, a lot of what he did was just simply getting the football to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on quick passes and just allowing their athleticism to take over. Of course, that was a brainchild of now former Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel. But nonetheless, I feel like Miami's best chance to do something with that team was 2023. Of course, the last couple of years, injuries to Tua, injuries to others, really, prevented the Dolphins from going out there and being a postseason team as they finished with a losing record in each of the last 2 years. So for the Dolphins, like I said, I think the purge continues. At some point this offseason, you are going to see them bid farewell to Tua Tagovailoa. That's going to be a matter of which team picks him up for the 2026 season. And it's going to be a matter to see which team picks up Tyreek Hill for the 2026 season as well. Whoever gets him is definitely going to get him on the cheap because we're talking about a veteran receiver on the north side of 30 who is coming off of a dislocated kneecap as well as a torn ACL. And when you think about Tyreek Hill's NFL career, his game, his style is predicated off of speed and explosion. And now you're asking him on the side of 30 to come back and be the same Tyreek Hill, coming off of not only a torn ACL, but a kneecap injury. That is going to be a very tough ask. I do think somebody will give Tyreek Hill a chance for next season. He's going to have to prove himself on a 1 year deal on the cheap. And if they can get a Tyreek Hill close to what Tyreek Hill has been, it's going to be a steal, of course. But nonetheless, I think it is still going to be a reach. The Dolphins, like I said, they're scaling back. They're tearing this thing down, and they're going to start fresh. I think what the Dolphins have to do, because things have not worked out for them for so long, they actually have to have some type of plan. Okay. And it starts with their general manager. What is this team going to be? Of course, they have to find their quarterback of the future going forward. Who is that going to be? Like I said, 2000 is a long time ago. That was the last time that the Dolphins won a playoff game. And I'm going to hit you with another long stat right here. We had Don Shula, the late Don Shula, as the head coach of Miami for 26 years. Following Shula's retirement after the 1995 NFL season, no Dolphins head coach has completed 5 years. The guy that came close was Dave Wannstedt. Okay, he got fired during the 2004 season. Since then, no other head coach has made it to 4 seasons. Okay, and again, it starts, and I always say this: it starts with your front office, with the GM, with your head coach, and of course, quarterback. And of course, unfortunately for Miami, after all of those great years with Dan Marino, after all of those great years with Bob Greasy, two Hall of Fame quarterbacks, it has been a revolving door at the most important position on the field. So, like I said, the Dolphins are really scaling this thing back. They're starting over. John Eric Sullivan is going to build and shape this roster in his image. He brought in Jeff Hafley with him from the Green Bay Packers. And like I said, I am not surprised by these moves today. And I'm not going to be surprised, as I really do feel more are going to come. And like I said, I truly do believe the Tua has played his last game for the Dolphins. But nonetheless, not a surprising day for the Dolphins. They're knocking this thing down, and they're going to try to build it back up again. And let's see what the next step or the next steps are going to be this offseason for Miami. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And as always, if you like what you heard and saw in this podcast, you know what to do. Just hit that like button, as well as subscribing to this channel. And like I always say, it's greatly appreciated. Also, if you are on the X, formerly known as Twitter, you can check me out anytime at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you give me that follow, it will be my pleasure to do the same in return. That also goes for Instagram, and you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. And also, if you're on Facebook, definitely be sure to check out the Sports Depot 365. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the better sports groups going on social media. But until next time, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying thanks once again for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.